So today's lesson is on basic trigonometry. Trig is so widely used that it's used in almost every type of job that's out there. Especially if you're a video game designer, you're going to be using trig all the time in your work. So trig is a relationship in triangles that uses ratios and proportions to solve for unknown parts, like the side lengths and angle measures. So if we have a triangle here, and we're going to call this angle down here angle X, then if you take a look at that angle, you'll notice that there is a side, oops, I forgot to put in the right angle, there we go. There is a side that's opposite to that angle. There is a hypotenuse to that angle, and there is a side that is adjacent to that angle. The three basic functions in trig are sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine is abbreviated SIN, and that's how you'll see it on your calculator. And you always do sine of the angle equals the opposite side of that angle over the hypotenuse of that angle. Cosine of the angle is abbreviated COS, and you'll notice that it is the adjacent of that angle over the hypotenuse of that angle. And tangent is abbreviated TAN, and that ratio is opposite over adjacent. So you do have to memorize those things, but this right here will help you memorize it. SOHCAHTOA will help you know that the sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of the angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent of the angle equals opposite over adjacent. So this right here you do need to memorize, and that will help you out tremendously when you're working through your trigonometry problems. Okay, so I've come up with 5 simple steps to help any person solve a basic trigonometry problem. And so the first step is to copy the whole triangle on your paper. So here I have an example triangle, triangle NMP. We know that the angle measure is 20. We know that the side length here is 8, and we have the right angle right there. Our second step is to circle the angle that you are working from. So in this case, we're working from angle N because that's the one that we know. And we're going to label the sides as opposite. So the one that's opposite of angle 20 is our opposite. And our hypotenuse is always the one across from the right angle, and the adjacent is the one that is left over. Your angle that you're working from will never, ever, ever be the right angle itself. You're only ever going to work from one of the acute angles that you are given. So our next step is to decide on a function. And to help you decide, what you do is you highlight the side that you're given. So in this case, we're given the 8. And then you need to look at what you're trying to find. Let's say that you are trying to find out what MP is. That's our goal. Okay, so that's going to be our goal here. And so then I would highlight MP. So that means that I am going to be using the opposite, because that's what I'm trying to find, and the hypotenuse because that is what I'm given. Now I'm going to look and see SOHCAHTOA right here. I have opposite and hypotenuse that I'm working with, so I'm going to look and see which one of these 3 deals with opposite and hypotenuse. And as you can see, the one that deals with opposite and hypotenuse is my SOH. So that means I'm going to be using sine. And my fourth step is just to simply write the trig function and solve. So I am using SOH, like I said before. So I'm going to go sine of my angle is 20 degrees, equals the opposite, I don't know, I'm trying to find, over the over the hypotenuse, which is 8. And so now I just need to solve for x. So as you can see, if this was a regular algebra problem, I would simply multiply by 8 on both sides. So those cancel. And so what I'm left with is that x is going to equal 8 times sine of 20. So now what you need to do is take out your calculator and figure out what 8 times sine of 20 is. And I used my calculator. I found out that 8 times sine of 20 is 2.74. So my answer then is 2.74 centimeters. And there we have it. So when you're solving trig functions, you're only going to have one of 3 situations, and here's what they are. So you're either going to have to sine it, when you set it up, it's going to be like sine of 20 equals x over 8, in which case what you're trying to find is on the numerator, or sine of 20 equals 8 over x, in which case what you're trying to find is on the denominator, or sine of x equals 8 over 20, in which case what you're trying to find is the angle itself. And these are the only 3 situations that you will have. And so as you can see, the one that we did over here is what we were trying to find is on the numerator. And as you can see, what we did is multiply on both sides for that one. So that's the trick for the first one here, and I'm going to show you the trick for the second one next. So as you can see, what we did on that first one is we multiplied 8 by our sine of 20. If what we're trying to find is on the denominator, what we're going to do is instead of multiplying like we did there, we're going to divide. And lastly, if what we're trying to find is the angle itself, then what we're going to do is use what's called the inverse sign on your calculator of 8 divided by 20. And those are the only 3 situations that you're going to have in basic trigonometry. So if you just learn those 3 things, you'll be doing really well. Okay, let's move on to another problem. Okay, so here's another problem where we want to find the measure of angle C. So I'm going to follow my rules. First of all, I have everything copied down exactly as I need it. I'm going to circle the angle that I'm working from and draw an arrow so that I can label my opposite, my hypotenuse, and my adjacent. Now I'm going to look and see what I'm given. I'm given the opposite, and we are also given the hypotenuse. So we need to think about our rule, right? SOHCAHTOA. So I'm going to write it up here. And I want to look and see which one has the opposite and the hypotenuse. So I have OH here, I have AH here, and I have OA here. So the only one that has O and H is the sine. So that's the one that I'm going to use. So now I'm going to write my function. So I have sine of my angle that I'm trying to find is C, equals its opposite, which is 15, over its adjacent, which is 18.2. Now what I'm trying to find is the angle itself. So this time I'm going to use the inverse sine. So inverse sine of 15 divided by 18.2 will equal my angle C. Now I need to use my calculator to find out what that is. So using my calculator, I found out that the the inverse sine of 15 divided by 18.2 is 55.5050212, etc. So if I'm going to round that to the nearest whole number, which is usually what you do for degrees, then I'm going to write that the measure of angle C is 56 degrees. Okay, so those are the basics for how to use trigonometry on right triangles. Thanks for watching.